Yeah, let's try a few more just to brush up. We're gonna do a few of these, but in every section, because they actually do groupings of kana. They don't use all the kana. They have 2 groups of kana. So if it's stacks of 2 pairs, so if you have like 2 kana together, they will use 2 different groups. So there's 4. They're separated in 4, so there's only 8 kana when there's pairs. When there's triples, there's potential 12 kana, and they take 3 pools. And each pool is 4 kana. So then you have to go to a new lesson, which the 2 kanas are swapped again. They stick with the pooled kanas. That's kind of how the pattern they're going. And that actually is kind of effective, in my opinion, to be grouping them, because then you'll be clustering them. And that's a great way to start off memory, and then you can wean off of it. So you can tell that specific kana are associated with each other in the group that you learn them in, which I don't remember anymore, because when you get really used to it, you no longer need that association, so you don't practice that association anymore. But initially, it was all the new ones I know they're associated with. So like even the romaji are associated with them, like new, he, new, he, ho, and I say that, but it's still really tough because it didn't come up again yet. We only did this once yesterday. New, he, ho, and so it's easier if I draw these things, because I am reliant now on kana. So which one is missing of the 4 that I saw yesterday? Oh, I'm missing this thing. Ooh. Yep. See, this is what I mean by if you cluster things, you can still remember all of them. Even I remember uru before I remember the romaji. So back and forth. So they cluster these intentionally, and eventually, once you accommodate all of them, I don't remember the last, like, I think we have 8 clusters now, and the only cluster I remember is the newest one. I don't remember any of the other clusters because they don't matter anymore. Where, like, once you stop relying, you can naturally transition away from the clusters. That's how memory consolidates in a way that you start individually looking at them. But I do like this approach. I think it's something that works a lot, but most people don't understand that that's how it works. Like, that's working for them. The people that know it works are less likely to observe that it works. Those who are struggling would hyper focus on knowing, like, oh yeah, these are associated, right? You have new, he, ho, and nu. When you associate these and it doesn't work, this is the paradox of human learning. If it doesn't work, then the person is likely to blame association. And I encountered this a bunch of times when this becomes a crutch, as in they do not naturally leave and view these things as separate elements. So what happens is you have to naturally, or you have to intellectually separate them. And this is largely the technique that most people do, in intellectually separate them. And I don't learn this way. This is not how I learn. In fact, I actually argue that this type of technique, the older you get, the more techniques you have in separating them naturally. So you gain a lot of experience in separating things as you grow older. When you're younger, you rely on associations, but do not intuitively separate them. So when you look at romaji, and kana, these things become linked really, really hard. And what happens is if you're younger, you would like to remove one of these so that they force separation. The downside of that is you'll never learn Romaji, which was the last digression from yesterday. And you don't have to learn Romaji. That's why it's nice, right? You don't need Romaji for Japanese specifically. And as I mentioned yesterday, I want both because they're tools for me. And I have no problem separating the two. When the older you get, in my opinion, naturally, if you compare yourself to your younger self and your older self, you naturally have many abilities to separate meaning and grouping from each other. It's one of the things that adults typically, if they're highly educated or continue to educate themselves, they have very great ability to learn about their focus. So even if these two things are on the screen at the same time, you can naturally go from here to here or here to here once you become familiar with them. So regardless of which way is you pick the way that's fastest and then you separate them afterwards. The faster you become familiar with the association, the quicker you can decouple them, is what I think personally. So right now, I don't think I'm the only one who uses this over time. I've met right now maybe 10 people, I would say, serendipitously, and not a single person uses associative techniques. In fact, I would say over 5 of them exclusively use intellectual separation. So what that means to me is these 5 have less tools to learn or learning, and they are less flexible, likely less flexible as teachers. They do have a higher ceiling though. A higher ceiling. In exchange, they have a higher ceiling of expertise. That's kind of the whole thing from yesterday. Anyways, let's practice again. Ha and ra, ra, ra. How am I drawing a blank on? Oh, ra is and then ma ki he su so ra te i. Obviously, most of the stuff I'm talking about is not very necessary. Whatever works gets you there in a self-satisfactory way. That's number one, if it's satisfying. And which goes into motivation. Because with satisfaction and motivation, what it does is it inhibits impatience. As in, it mitigates the hustle. And personally, to me, the internet gives you plenty of hustle and not enough satisfaction and motivation, which promotes patience. And with patience comes consistency. These are the goals to life skills, in my opinion. Obviously, if you're not in the market to develop life skills, that's perfectly fine. If your life skills make you happy, then you don't require to develop patience or consistency, and you don't require to develop other techniques of satisfaction and motivation, because your life skills are already sufficient. For me, the people that I usually interact with or am targeting are people who are deficient in life skills. So when these people are deficient in life skills and they try to learn based on hustle culture, right? What's the fastest way to learn Japanese? And I can tell you, well over 70% of people are more used to the hustle culture. They lack the life skills to remain happy. They usually brute force past motivation and satisfaction, past the inconsistencies, right? In order to learn something that the hustle will reward them with faster gratification. And to me, which is a subjective point of view, I think language and communication is a life skill. So here lies the paradox of getting people to be consistently learning language, but not necessarily be disappointed, overly critical, hyper-focusing, because these things do not, in my opinion, synergize with endurance, which are necessary for life skills. So if you're learning language, dealing with disappointment, feeling of progress, critical thinking, hyper-focusing, that will be a very, in my opinion, non-sustainable relationship. I understand that some people can do both. There are individuals who have already not focused that they have a sustainable life skills, and then they offer advice on how to hustle. As in, hey, I've been learning language for 25 years. Here's how I learned 25 different languages in less than 24 hours each. What that's saying is they already have a sustainable life skill before they give you these hustle tips. So one of the things that I constantly worry about on the internet is that the most important thing that comes up in a hustle video, I call these the hustle videos, as in fastest way, best way. The first thing you have to hear is if that person tell you what, why, and how of the person itself. When someone introduces themselves and say, hey, I speak fluently in 5 languages, and here's how. The very first most important message you get is this person already speaks 5 languages. That is the biggest point. The preface is the biggest point to frame yourself, because when you start following the advice, the hustle of someone who speaks 5 languages, it's not that they're lying to you or they're deceiving you. They're doing their best. The idea is you are guarding yourself. You are guarding and tempering your expectations from the hustle. So you won't be angry. It's a win-win, in my opinion. You won't be angry at them for giving hustle information that kind of help you, or they change your life, or you get disappointed. The idea is it provides consistency when you understand the context of the person. So it's not a coincidence that at the beginning of each of my journeys, I spend the most time explaining where my position comes from, where my thinking comes from. Because without that, all my advice is irrelevant. It's moot. If you don't feel or resonate with the position I'm in, the hustle, all the provocative advice that comes after is irrelevant. It might even be destructive to you, like self-destructive. Not they're out to hurt you. You're going to be your worst enemy, because you're going to feel like a failure if it does fail. You're going to feel overconfident if it succeeds, and there's no realistic outcome. So that's just kind of my little take about the hustle culture and the language. You've been in my position before. Oh, fictitious. Yes, the good old I've been there before. All right, so let's go from, let's use our kana for this, right? So we're gonna go into our kana, and then we're gonna do this way, right? So let's see. You just came and you're confused? Well, I was talking about the hustle culture of learning life skills, so I imagine you would be a little bit confused. Those things take like 2 or 3 hours to explain. So no worries. We're gonna go back to doing Duolingo again. So let's go hara, ra, and then maki. Oh, I already did all these on the side, but we'll do it again just for practice. Maki, tetsu, sora, teki. All right. And then now we're gonna go this side, right, to this side. This is the process that I generally use most of the time. All right. Tetsu, sora, hara, maki, and teki. Okay. Matsuri. I'm still hoping this is festival, because there's a matsuri on Thursdays before the 3-day Otakon. Why am I learning Japanese? Why not? I'm learning Japanese to demonstrate how I learn. So I'm recording myself learning something that I consider as a life skill. That's the slightly less short answer. So the short answer is why not? The less short answer is I like to demonstrate how to learn as someone who gets older and older, and someone who's in the field of education and teaching. And then the very, very long answer is most of my life I've been exposed to Japanese entertainment, Japanese media, and why not kill 4 birds with 1 stone and do all of the things I said earlier? Why not? Teaching people how to learn, or explaining how my learning process works versus other people, and then doing it for a while, right? Consistency, developing a life skill, and recording myself for posterity, and all of that. You love to learn language and there are no realistic examples online. You love to learn language and there are no realistic examples online. May I ask what you mean by realistic? Or like, what are you looking for? How do you determine if something is realistic? I'm curious. Matsuri. So matsuri. So going into this, before I started Duolingo in Japanese, there are some pragmatic and objective reasons why I'm doing this exactly, like this specific. Duolingo is free. It is streamable on Twitch. So that's why I'm using Duolingo. There's obviously a lot of other examples, and my goal is to apply what I usually learn, how I learn and pick up life skills and any skill for that matter, using this. It's not necessarily to learn Japanese. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not here to master Japanese. I'm here to demonstrate skills that you would use to learn language. And you can use that for video games. You can use that for video games, solving your depression, evaluating yourself, giving other people advice, how to teach other people stuff, or how to discuss when you don't understand something and then someone else doesn't understand something you're saying. That's what I'm using Duolingo to do. And on the side, as a secondary icing on the cake, I'm actually learning Japanese, which is self-motivated because I do love the Japanese culture at a distance. And as an Asian American, I am not Japanese, by the way. I do like trying to engross myself in a culture that I don't have access to. Is someone learning and showing the full journey while being interesting? Oh, well, thank you. What is your experience with Japanese, by the way? I see you have Jojo and Siwa and for real. So that's the FR. That kind of leads you into right, pre-selection. You have some pre-selection on your name, right? Which does strike me as someone who's into anime dominant culture. Perhaps you even know of the game Osu, right? Because of this specific internet jargon is pretty telling, as well as JoJo, right? You're chronically online. I see. Why this? I'm curious now. I'm interested in why Duolingo stream, or someone who's learning Japanese if you're chronically online. I imagine there's a lot of things you can do online, so I kind of want to know what interests you other than the whole realistic thing that you've mentioned so far.
Matsuri?
So I'm gonna rely on the fact that Matsuri is festival. It is festival. So here's a little story about how I know that Matsuri. So Matsuri is festival. Well, actually, before festival, we say Matsuri, right? Matsuri. And then before that, and then festival. So every year, I volunteer at Otakon. But we, the Keikona says Otakon actually, but Otakon is a East Coast anime convention, and I volunteer there to help the little adorable peepos get into their weekend of fun. But before the 3-day weekend, there's a day before. There used to be, I'm not sure if they do that anymore, the day before, which is Thursday, there's a Matsuri. And I never forgot what Matsuri meant, because I had to look up why Thursday was called a Matsuri. But there you go. Just tie in your memories so that you can use it as a tool to get invested in it. And I've been to Otakon. I think the next Otakon in 2024 is going to be my 18th. No, it's my 17th consecutive Otakon. So I've been to 17 years. And we had to put consecutive in quotations because COVID locked out one of it. One of the Otakons were canceled because of COVID. But 17 consecutive years. And I've been volunteering 7 of these years consecutively. I've been a wee young lad. I've actually been to more Otakons than the vast majority of kids that I interact with these days online. Especially when it comes to Japanese. Like the manga and anime culture. I've almost been to this convention more than the vast majority of the people I interact with here. Usually it's most of them are between this age group, probably. Occasionally you meet 20s, early 20s. And then from time to time, since my content is largely geared towards young adults, sometimes there's 16 less, but the way I talk up to 16 less is a little bit different than young adults, just to make sure that these little kiddos are safe, right? We got to be very careful of certain misunderstandings. Fun stuff. Duolingo is simple. I like to communicate with people. I see. I stopped learning Japanese because where I am from, where are you from, languages are seen as irrelevant and nobody supports your hobby. Oh, that's so unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that. Is it discouraging to you that no one supports your language? Where you are, it sounds like you love the learning language enough to want to do it yourself initially. Do they like go out of their way to put you down or something? Because for me, where I'm from, right, my environment, this is not a necessary skill, so you don't necessarily need to learn language. Since as you can tell, I speak American English, and usually English is sufficient for as much as I enjoy language. I use language as an example of life skills. The vast majority of people who speak English don't put on the top of their list I need to learn other languages, or learning Japanese specifically, actually. Even within the language department, right? When you think about the language, especially in the United States, Spanish would be at the top. And it's because of its pragmatism. So I did learn Spanish formally because of that. Because if you're thinking pragmatically, Spanish has a gigantic reach. And then the other one is Mandarin. And then I would say third would be Arabic. Arabic would probably... So these are just largely based on reach, like pure pragmatic numbers. So if oftentimes when people put you down on hobbies and whatnot, they often rely on pragmatic arguments. So what is the reach? For the United States, Spanish will get you in contact with a lot of people. You will encounter Spanish as you travel, do business, do careers. You're gonna encounter Spanish. So that's a very earnest and pragmatic way of arguing, hey, I want to learn Spanish. Japanese is a little bit difficult because Japanese outside of Japan is a very online pre-selected usage. And I definitely agree with like my parents are from China and they're incredibly pragmatically focused. So they often say there's really no pragmatic reason to learn a language that is pre-selected into a very pocket. If your time spent with Spanish, you can present a better argument or a more pragmatic argument. However, generally speaking, the desire to learn a language often should, in a healthy person, trump all these pragmatisms. So like when someone says, oh, there's no point in it, a healthy young adult I would like to know that they developed desires and motivation that doesn't completely hinder on pragmatism. Like, oh, does it make sense to learn Japanese? I like to hope that kids don't have to answer that question. It doesn't have to make sense. If you feel like you like it, I hope that the environment you have doesn't discourage you from doing things you like. When you become an adult, like, you know, like much older, then all right, you know, pragmatism is necessary because there are other considerations like food, you know, money, things that can weigh into pragmatism. Impact, right? Communication. Especially family members like to annoy me because of my interest in kanji. Okay, I see. Here's the thing, right? Is it when they annoy you, is it hurtful? I mean, it does sound like it's discouraging. However, oh, okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Have you ever expressed to them, like to me, say like I'm asking you why you're learning Japanese? Because, have you ever tried, like I'm curious, have you ever tried expressing these types of, I don't want to say like, it sounds a little sappy, but these types of feelings, like, or present a pragmatic case or why this makes you feel nice to learn Japanese. It's part of learning language in general, being able to express it in a way that they're like, yo, you know what? You're really making my life a little miserable. And their family, right? We're talking about family here. So it's not like a stranger like myself and maybe like some online person who shares the same interest. That's, you know, family is way greater than that. Because you can definitely do a lot with not necessarily learning literally just Japanese, but the idea is if you participate in learning, like here's a little argument that I would give to your family. If this is pointless, for example, if they're discouraging you, they probably find it's pointless or a waste of time. That's usually the bottom line in being annoying and discouraging, like the motivations. Ask yourself, if you learn Japanese, what do you gain by learning? If you're younger, I'm gonna say you're definitely younger than 25, somewhere around there. I would say even lower, you're younger than 20, because of the discouraging nature, how someone can annoy you and discourage you from this. You can demonstrate that if you learn something, and learning Japanese, you're 17, okay. If you learn Japanese, if you tell your folks, when you learn a language, it is very difficult. It is a discipline that can last for a lifetime. When you learn something, you are developing the skills to do something very difficult. How does that serve anything? Well, let's say you go get a job and on your resume, you write, you know 2 languages. I'm going to tell you now, if a language like Japanese comes up and the employer asks you, why did you learn Japanese? Which is the same question you asked me. And you could explain your expression, which I've been asking you why you learn Japanese, like what motivates you. If you can express that in a cogent way, what does that demonstrate to the employer? At least for myself, if I was trying to employ you, it means that you have dedication. You can learn born abstraction, like ways of thinking of complicated things, right? Complicated things that aren't related to you. So you can learn new things is a great example. So if you can explore what it means to learn a new language, Japanese itself might be useful. Like a lot of times when you're talking to a younger person, they think about the goal that is useful. So if you learn Japanese, it'll help you talk to Japanese people. However, when you learn something, you are learning other skills. And one of the biggest skills you're learning is you're learning how you learn. And this is money. If you struggle, solve, and retain, especially a language, you can learn almost anything. It's true. I say this about pretty much everything. Like if you struggle with something and you overcome that struggle and you retain it, it demonstrates to someone that you basically graduated from a good education. And what's even more impressive, if you do it alone. If you did this alone, self-motivated, which is what this sounds like. If you're self-motivated, like not dependent on, say, a stranger online or your favorite influencer, and if you just did it alone against annoying parents or family, when you become older, this skill that you have, these skills that keep you motivated, self-motivated, and graduating and learning new things, this is money. On a resume, if you like apply for a job and a resume is all the things that you have learned, all the skills that you have to offer. They don't necessarily have to be pragmatically relevant to demonstrate to an adult who's going to hire you, like a boss who's going to hire you, to have to be relevant, because they're looking for someone who can learn really, really fast, pick up and go. It's a bonus if you have skills that are relevant to their job. So obviously you're going to accept applying to a job you're interested in with the skills. All the extra skills, you can spin it. It's very useful. It tells someone you can learn things without the necessity of the encouragement of anyone else. It is nice, obviously, to have your family's backing, people to communicate within communities. But if you can do it yourself, that is a very, very rare person. And I understand it kind of sucks that, you know, you're being discouraged, but maybe one day when you find more confidence, right? More confidence in things and self-motivation, you might pick up Japanese again. I mean, you're already learning kanji. I'm not going to get to kanji in another 2 months, probably. I might not ever get to kanji. I have another way of finding out what I'm going to do for kanji, but for now I'm working on kana, the first two kanas, which are hirakana and kitakana. So hopefully that kind of expresses I'm projecting here. So the word I'm using here is I'm projecting. So when you ask me why am I learning Japanese, part of the answer is this. So when I illustrate how to learn something, when I talk about the pros and cons about learning and stuff, I hope that in some way during the long journey, younger people use that to their advantage. Obviously, this stuff doesn't really appeal to an adult who is successful already. So if an adult is already successful, they might be inspired by something. But generally speaking, when you're already successful and you're older, these guys already have their other methods, their own methods of self-motivation, learning that doesn't depend on other people. And maybe one day as you get into your 20s, you'll feel enough confidence from like skills you learn that be like, heck, I love this. I will continue doing it. And that's one of the components of learning that I feel the internet does not provide. This is a giant component of learning. This thing I'm describing is a life skill. To be able to do something and learn something with confidence that's not dependent on other people. So, you know, keep your chin up. Hopefully you find something that you really like, that you just don't care about other people per se, like don't have them sway you, but you can at least take in input still and argue back and like express back, this is my value. If I learn Japanese, it helps me learn anything. Japanese is a very difficult language for a lot of people. And if I can learn Japanese and show you I can learn Japanese, then I can learn a lot of other things because I did something hard. I did something challenging, and it's a skill for life. So if that helps you with expressing or trying to counter argue some people who are putting you down, right? It's not, I don't think they're malicious in a way. I don't want to make it sound like your family is malicious. I don't necessarily think they are. What they're trying to do is they're trying to be pragmatic. And their pragmatism is based on their biases, like their thoughts. Like, what is useful? Well, learning Japanese is not useful. That's probably because they are not necessarily as interested in Japanese as you are. So the idea is it's up to you to convince them that Japanese or learning a language is useful. And that gives you power and confidence over time. So when someone comes to me and say, this is the best way, like since I'm a streamer that deals with education, someone can easily come up to me and say, this Duolingo is garbage, which I've heard a bunch of times actually, or it has shortcomings. And I have to express a counter argument to these. So I use my experience and make it sound convincing, but not in a way that I'm trying to say, no, this is not the case. I know it has shortcomings, so I understand where these guys are coming from. Much like I definitely understand when you want to do something and people are around you and they discourage you. Like, for example, when I was younger, when I was 18, I wanted to be a film director. And then that kind of matriculated into game direction, game design. And before that, I wanted to be a computer engineer, whatever, that's the general term back in the day. It's been a really long time. Like, this stuff, computer software design, programming, all that stuff is still like in its early stages when I was deciding what my career was. But I ended up becoming a scientist. However, scientist was less than a doctor, than a physician. And my parents are Chinese. So I don't have to tell you too much about the stereotypes of having a potential tiger mom and a complacent father who basically follows traditional Chinese pragmatism, right? Yet I turned into someone else, right? I have a PhD in biology. I'm learning Japanese. And I'm streaming on Twitch and YouTube, right? All these things are an uphill battle. And nothing can keep someone from feeling happy and sustainably happy and goal seeking and successful as long as you're 17. So I don't want to sound too overwhelming. As you're growing, getting older, you're hopefully developing ways to keep motivated and doing your thing, right? And one of them does involve, you can leverage learning Japanese. You still don't know what a tiger mom is? So a tiger mom, I don't want to make this sound like a stigma. So it's not a bad thing, in my opinion. So this is coming from a Chinese American. Like, for me, when I say tiger mom, a lot of times from the outside, it would be like a very forceful, aggressive parenting style. But to me, it creates someone like me. So tiger mom is someone who is aggressive. And what I mean aggressive is constantly pushing. And they're very traditional. So, like, for example, things that don't come up that are often there's our do's and don'ts. So if you're thinking about like your parents telling you what is useful and what is a waste of time, this is an expression or parental style. And this to me is kind of a endearment. Like, what I see is this aggression, this pushing, this traditionalism is that they know these things work. Like, what works for them? Working hard, getting a good education, making a lot of money. These are things that work for them. So just as I have a tiger mom, right? I have a tiger mom. I have to build myself up just as strong. So in order for me, if I don't agree with this, if you don't agree, right? I could, and there was a chance in a parallel universe, I was born to be agreeing with my tiger mom. Then I would do everything my tiger mom wants because our interest aligns. We have the same interest. Unfortunately, or fortunately, in my life, I didn't agree with my mother of how to do this. I didn't agree with her. So how was this useful? It told me that I had to build myself up. I need to learn life skills, understand my parents' perspective, right? Understand myself well enough, understand myself, and then express myself in a way that I can challenge them. So my mother is a tiger mom. She's incredibly aggressive. She knows what she wants in her child. She knows what's best. She thinks she knows what's best for me. And because of that pushing and pulling, I grew up to be an incredibly stronger person. Even though I disagree with her, I needed to develop all the skills, all the life skills, to understand where my mother is coming from. She loves me. That's why she's aggressive, right? She loves me because she knows these are the things that worked for her, or these are the things she grow older knowing that they work. And I had to understand that perspective in order to understand where I am, and then present a counter argument. And if I win out, I become someone different from her visions. So instead of becoming a physician, I became a scientist. Instead of running instead of becoming a physician, I could explain to my mother why I didn't want to become a physician and understand that I need to satisfy her concerns. So why does she want me to become a physician? So I had to spend time at least trying to talk to her, get her perspective. And then what I do is I find an alternative solution. I became a scientist. I did certain things that allow me to remove and achieve the same goals. So she had goals for me, right? And I had to understand those goals and demonstrate to her that I don't need to become a doctor to reach those goals. And that's kind of like the whole language thing and learning. Like, what are your goals? So if you certainly your family could be annoying, you can oftentimes, if you have trouble expressing yourself, then ask your parents, why are they annoying you? Like, why? Explain why Japanese is useless. Like, explain why what you're doing is a waste of time. Then take those things and demonstrate that what you're doing actually solves those things, or at least most of those things, enough to convince them that you understand their perspective. At the same time, your perspective convinces them that it's meaningful. So over time, as my parents saw me grow up and I became 18 and I left the nest, I basically left the nest. Both me and my sister were both within a year of each other. So both of us left and we became extraordinarily different people than our parents imagined. And when we come home, our parents are no longer dissatisfied because the task and the things and the actions that we have done fulfills the goals that they wanted to work by presenting a very specific image. So they wanted a doctor, a physician that makes an impact on the world, that doesn't have long hours and isn't uncontrollable, right? My parents worked at a restaurant, so customers always right, that kind of thing. There's no flexibility. There's a lot of things that they're projecting that says this is a way to not have those problems that they don't like and they don't want their children to have. So I have convincingly developed enough life skills in understanding of their perspective to counter argue, and they no longer have that problem. So now I do things in so many ways that still fulfill those goals without ever being like it's inconceivable to them. And that's kind of the idea. And while you're doing all of this, you know, understanding yourself, understanding other people's perspective, you're developing life skills. And life skills go a long way. And one of the biggest life skills that you're doing, in my opinion, as an adult, as a stranger online that you just met, when you are learning anything that is tough, and not, hear me out here, before you go into thinking something, when I mean tough, I don't mean just because Japanese may be hard for you. It's tough going against family. It's tough having less resources. It's tough talking to strangers. It's tough. Internet hustle culture is tough. And you might, this needs a little bit of elaboration. When you go on the internet, you see others success. That's the internet hustle culture. It's actually very tough seeing that. So let me think about this. So let me elaborate, sorry. Learning Japanese. What's a great argument for learning Japanese in your position, in my opinion? It is tough for all these things. Learning Japanese is already tough. So you're going to learn ways to learn Japanese, right? What are you going to learn when you're learning Japanese? How to stay consistent. How to sound training, culturalism. There's so many, the list goes on just from learning Japanese itself. Now we're going against family, motivation, self-awareness, self-expression, self-control, discipline, patience, communication. The list keeps going. Compromise. And less resources. So if you're not motivated by people, you're not annoyed, like people annoy you, you have less resources. That's less affirmation. Affirmation is when someone says, good job, keep going, kind of thing. You have less of that. It's less encouraging. So less affirmation, less encouragement. So you develop skills to get to feel more reward, right? You have to develop all these skills when you have less resources. I'm not stating the obvious ones. Less resource could just mean less money, right? A lot of people focus on less money, and you'll use your imagination. Those are pragmatic things. I'm sure most people are intelligent enough at this young adult phase to pick those resources. I'm picking the resources that you have control over most of the time, that you can develop, which is finding sources of affirmation, encouragement, reward. Those are tough. You have to learn to make more from less. If people are not encouraging to you around your life, strangers are not encouraging to you. Like if you say you're a streamer like myself and someone comes up and say you're learning the wrong way, well, it doesn't faze me. I have a lot of ways to redeem and counter argue. I take that advice, absorb it, and spin it in a different way. That's affirmation, encouragement. There's a lot of people that aren't here to encourage you as well online, right? They'll have their own ideas, their own things, their own ways of making things work. So that's kind of skills like that. And then talking to strangers, that's obvious. It kind of feeds into almost all of these things. And then the internet hustle culture, which is things get done fast. If you don't see progress like you see on internet hustle culture, give up. You can't be as good. So that's kind of the idea. All of these things are untapped skills you can build by choosing to learn Japanese right now in your life. All these skills, and it's overwhelming. So it's super overwhelming for a kid your age. Oftentimes kids have at least some of these things. You have family who may encourage you, provide reward for a job well done. So it makes it less tough, right? Less tough. Oftentimes when as an adult, as an educator, I want to lower some of these barriers, like lower the need for self-expression, lower the need for self-control, maybe remove some of the discipline until the person doesn't find it overwhelming and quit. And that's kind of the education and teaching. And yes, being a parent does involve being able to teach your kids and educate your kids in all of these facets. The parent is kind of, and family, the people who are older have access to these much more easily. And their goal is to try to jostle these around so that you don't quit, but you are also having a tough time, because things that are tough forces you or conditions you to intuitively find solutions. Having a really easy time with all these things, you won't develop any of these skills at all. So when the first obstacle you hit in the future, you're going to have to develop these skills. So in my opinion, a great way to kind of counter argue why learn Japanese right now, well, it's because people don't believe in me. Why learn Japanese? Because you annoy me. And why is that the case? Because now you have to learn how to not make the annoyance stop you, how to make people believe in you when they don't. All these are skills. How do you be charismatic to someone? So when charisma is a life skill. The way I'm presenting this right now is a development of an uphill battle. So my parents know what works. They've already been through life and stuff. So when you push, right? When they push harder, it's an opportunity to show them how hard you can push back without like being malicious or something. It's different from saying like, I hate you, I don't care about you. That's weak. That's weak. Like, in my opinion, you can do better. So that kind of thing. All these things will allow you to love your parents for annoying you, or love your family for caring so much in a way, in their own way, but you can prove them different. Like, I can have all the things you annoy me about and continue learning Japanese, or continue whatever it is, video games, art, web design, computer engineering. And these are the elements that are what I call life skills. And if you have life skills, it will be okay, in my opinion. Obviously, this is a hot take. And this also takes many years. It may be forever. But this is uncapped. There's no glass ceiling for these things. No glass ceiling. So each day you ask yourself, how do I get more motivation to do the things that make me happy, right? How do I juggle all the responsibilities that I don't have control over in order to get closer to my goals, right? It's long. The journey's long. Life is your entire life. It doesn't end until it does, right? So all these skills, you're playing the long game. So hopefully, maybe you'll find someone online that will encourage you to learn Japanese again and pick up Japanese. It doesn't even have to be Japanese. It could be video games. Yeah, and I do play OS, Babin. The reason why I can pick up people who might be interested in like anime, like manga, or even Japanese language is often because I spent a lot of time in this realm, and online, especially Twitch, one consistent place is OS. So, yeah, hopefully that helps. The reason why I spend most of this time is I was committed. So this is going to be the digression for today. I hope some of that is interesting. But I want to highlight tough. If people don't believe in you, ask yourself if you need it. If you need it, find it. Or create it. Right? And what does that do? That's impressive. When you do these things, you will improve at life. Right? So that's kind of thing. This is hustling. So make sure, just as I'm worried about the hustle culture, remember that this sounds simple, but it's not simple. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to be today. When I'm learning Japanese on Duolingo, I'm going to be doing this for 365 days, at least. I'm not that guy that's going to tell you can learn any language in 24 hours. And here's how, because I spent all my years learning language. I actually haven't done that, so I can't even tell you that anyways. And I can tell you this, how long did it take me to do all of this? It took me my entire life. This process took me my entire life. I would say minus the first 5 years, because I was minus the first 5 years, because I was kind of, I was a little baby. All I could do was, but the earliest moment that I recognized that I had a tiger mom was probably around 5 years old. I still remember when I realized that, when I was 5 years old. I'm 36 now, by the way. I do stream daily, except maybe Wednesdays, but since I'm doing Duolingo, it's every day. I have to keep my Duolingo streak going, so it's going to be at least 2 or 3 hours every day with Duolingo, if not more. But I generally play video games at the second half. So the idea is enjoy doing something that doesn't necessarily rely on other people. And it's going to be tough. When it's too tough, find it or create it. Because these are the things you can possibly control. You can't control what you need. It's harder to control what you need. But you can always try to find and create something. Hopefully that's helpful. I can't choose between Mandarin and Japanese. Why not both? After Japanese, once I get into like 3 or 4 months of Japanese, I'll probably stagger both Japanese and Mandarin. So why not both? Start with one and then grab the other one. Life is long. You're 17. Plenty of time. Why not both? Your balance is bad. You want to do both? Start with one, you know? Anything is better than nothing. So a lot of times the hustle culture is kind of terrible at this, or the internet can be terrible at this advice when you think about how overwhelming things are. I know it's not necessarily completely related, but this is more of a conditioned response where like you want to do both, but what you do is you jump back and forth between Japanese and Mandarin. And oftentimes, yes, you could do this if you have enough experience. But when you think about that Mandarin and Japanese both exist, it can be overwhelming. So when you're overwhelmed, it takes longer to make decisions. So the idea is pick one, whichever one, and know that you will be satisfied, or try to know that you will be satisfied eventually. Because when you pick one, eventually you're going to get to the second one. It doesn't matter which one starts first. Your life is long enough that you get to do both. So instead of worrying about trying to do both at once, which may seem overwhelming, which leads to indecision, pick one. And the idea is, the reason is the internet is always about best and having it all. And when you see a lot of that, it creates this indecision where like, oh, there's a lot of things to consider. You know, I have Japanese and Chinese, but I kind of want to do them both at the same time. Start with one. You know you will be satisfied. Just trust yourself that you'll find it. So continue what you're doing now. And the take-home message that I usually say is better, in my opinion, better to do something than nothing at all. And this is why I worry about the hustle culture. When you spend a lot of time thinking about it, it's wonderful that you're thinking about all the things. If you think about it too much, you're going to end up doing nothing at all. So better to do something than nothing at all, even if it's not the best way. In fact, I would encourage people to do not the best way occasionally, maybe most of the time now, because most people are always talking about the best way, the highest value. Like, if I learn Japanese, I should also learn Mandarin, as opposed to, let me start with Mandarin and maybe I'll get to Japanese, right? You get to start somewhere. So better to do something than nothing at all. All right, there we go. Now we're gonna get back to completing one or two lessons today. Thanks for the share, Jojo. Keep that in mind. Right. And feelings and stuff don't really change overnight. So tomorrow you might sober up. Tomorrow you might sober up and still have that huge force push back on you. The idea is every day push back a little bit more, right? Push back a little bit more. So it's a long race. So once you go to bed tonight, you'll probably sober up and feel that whole weight comes back. Just a little bit at a time, right? Hey,